So welcome to Greenwald's monthly coffee break. I'm Doug Kincaid. I'm joined by my colleague Greg Hirschberger. This morning we're talking about everybody's favorite topic, consumer debt. You hear it a lot. You know it probably intimately. But for all those reasons, it's something that deserves a lot of attention. We're going to be talking about kind of the extent of the problem, credit cards in specific, and student loans. Also, kind of why it's such a thorny issue and difficult challenge for the country. And then also really tackling kind of the employer perspective, what solutions exist, and what should we be thinking about of kind of improving what can be offered in the workplace. So if you haven't tuned in before, our coffee breaks are small, informal, short discussions. It's about research that we're conducting or topics that we're exploring and we think our clients would be interested in. We do encourage you to chime in. We'll have kind of question and answer section at the end, but feel free to pop in on audio or video or just drop a question in the chat that we'll try to get to. And we enjoy when this is interactive and a discussion, not just a presentation. So if you have something that occurs to you, please feel free to offer that. So grab your coffee or tea. It's a chilly day, August 1st in DC. I'm not sure what's going on, but it's a good day for a coffee break. Or grab a water or anything else. And we're gonna go ahead and get rolling. So I already mentioned a little bit of kind of what the topic entails today. We're going to explore what exactly the debt problem looks like in America, what makes this such a challenging issue, why employers should care, I think is an important thing to address, and what employer solutions exist and what else is needed. And that includes what should we be doing to kind of improve how people engage with solutions. And you'll see throughout this that we're going to draw on publicly available stats, but also Greg is going to be presenting a lot of data from our workplace wellness study that we do with eBree every year. The 2025 one is currently rolling. We'll be talking about some of the 2024 results. And I'll put a plug in at the end if this is of interest to you. I think that study and sponsoring it especially could be really valuable for many. So let's start with, what does the debt problem look like in America? So first of all, if you haven't heard, it's a problem. I think many of you have heard. Here's kind of the latest look at non-housing debt in America as a total. We're up to 18.2 trillion overall, including kind of housing mortgage debt. Non-housing debt represents about 5 trillion now, as you can see, with some really big components of student loan and credit cards. Auto loans are also a growing issue here. We've pulled out a little bit of the specifics here for credit card and student loans. You can see in yellow, credit cards starting around 700 billion in 2003 have grown to 1.18 trillion as of first quarter of this year. And student loans just going crazy, down at 200 billion all the way up past credit cards to 1.63 trillion in the first quarter. Can move on to the next slide. Can see student loan debt also, if you're thinking about the individual burden, not just kind of what the country has accumulated, has gone from an average of 24,000 to 38,000 this year, as kind of the overall burden that someone takes out with student loans. And it's kind of not as impactful, just the sheer amount of credit cards, but a startling number. Americans now own more than 600 million credit cards, which, if you are kind of doing the math, there's only about 258 million adults in the US. There's a lot of credit cards. We use this as kind of our regular system. People have multiple credit cards, sometimes for good reason, and sometimes for problematic uh, management of their money. But it's a kind of growing phenomenon here. Number of credit cards, amount of credit that we're racking up.
Yeah. And Doug, American workers do agree that that is a problem. You mentioned the workplace wellness survey that we conduct with EBRI. I'll be sharing some results from that. This is from last year's study. We're currently in the field with this year's. So we interviewed 1,500 full-time and part-time American workers aged 21 to 64, weighted that to reflect the population of workers. And we found that in 2024, three-quarters of workers agree that their current level of debt is a problem, and that's mostly unchanged for the past 5 years. So, to what extent is that a problem? We're seeing 80% of workers who report carrying non-mortgage debt. And the median debt, at least last year, among those who do have debt, is around $15,000. But we see, close to 20% of folks with upwards of $50,000 in non-mortgage debt. And diving into that a little bit deeper, as to where that debt is going. Credit card debt is the leading problematic debt among those who say that their debt is a problem, with about 75% citing credit card debt as a problem, followed pretty closely by personal loans or lines of credit at about 50%, and medical or health related debt, which is also about 50%. Student loan debt, not quite as problematic, because a lot of folks, don't have student loan debt or have already paid it off, but still, for those that do have it, it is a problem. Median credit card debt we're seeing at $6,000 among those who do have that debt.
So two questions in the chat already that can bring up. We don't necessarily have answers to. Jack answers or asks, what is student loan debt for graduate and professional degrees versus undergraduate associate degrees? So said in the chat, we don't have that stat at hand, but I think that's available. But we will have a slide in a little bit that shows how many bachelor and grad degree seekers take out student loans, and it's a lot. And then second question, do we know how much overlap there is between consumer debt and living paycheck to paycheck? Is a great question. That would be a wonderful stat to ask about, and we'll make note of doing that. We will show just how much this is not only an issue of kind of living frivolously, but kind of the overlap would be wonderful to be able to describe. But thanks for asking.
And Doug, I can add that we do find in the workplace wellness survey that, the lower income you are, the more debt is a problem.
Sure. All right. So second section here, what makes this such a difficult issue to address? First of all, I think there's kind of a necessary statement. We've already kind of brought this up by showing how big of an issue debt has grown to be in America, but it's worth really thinking about the fact that we've built this into our normal financial system. So 73% of nationwide retail sales dollars are from credit card transactions. So you see it more and more. You are unlikely to be using cash at retail stores, and especially online now, obviously, is kind of taking over a lot of the transactions that we use. And then also 57% of bachelor degree seekers and 59% graduate degree seekers incurred student loan debt. This is of those who are under 30, I believe. So it's a little bit lower as you get into older age groups. But obviously a very common kind of strategy for dealing with the growing cost of going to college. So we've created this as kind of the normal system that makes it hard to feel like it's a problem that needs to be addressed. It's something that we are using every day. Other people should be able to use it appropriately. It also doesn't seem like something that needs to be kind of discussed at work, because it's just kind of how we deal with transacting in financial ways. It's also the case that there's a whole host of psychological behavioral traps related especially to credit card debt. So having debt makes it easier to accumulate more debt once you've kind of gone down the path of having debt that especially feels like a problem to you. It becomes easier to simply accumulate more, which psychologists like to describe as the what the hell effect. I'm just going to put more on the credit card. It's a problem. Growing the problem isn't as kind of difficult in your mind as creating the problem in the first place. And then also, interestingly, credit cards, researchers have found exploit reward networks in our brain where there's kind of this immediate positive, you get the thing, a delayed negative, you don't have to think about the money going out until the bill comes later in the month. And if you have kids and you've taken them to an arcade at all recently where you pay with a card, swiping it for credits that don't mean money, instead of having to put quarters in the machine, you know how easy it is for kids to not appreciate how much money is going into those machines. There's a variety of other things. Researchers have looked into this ad nauseum, that make this increasingly tricky for people to deal with. These are just a couple of them. But I think maybe most challenging is how we think about debt. It's easily stigmatized as bad behavior. It makes us not want to talk about it, if it's our own. And as Greg will walk through and has mentioned, it's not just about retail therapy. This is not just about kind of spending on luxury items. People are using this in day-to-day finances.
Right, Doug. And we'll start with kind of those emergencies or unexpected expenses that pop up. And as you said, debt has become a necessity for survival, rather than a situation that's created by frivolous spending. In our workplace wellness survey, we asked our workers, if they had an unexpected expense of $2,000, how would they come up with the funds to pay for that? And 50% say that they would take it from their savings, although that's only, that's not necessarily the ability to pay for all 2,000 from their savings, as this was a select all that apply question. So we have 35% who say they would charge the expense, at least in part, to their credit card. We're looking at the colors in these bars, purple being where they would incur some kind of debt, the shaded kind of gradient purple being where, well, maybe they would incur some kind of debt depending on, what their 401k structure is like, whether it's a loan or a withdrawal, and whether or not they would qualify for a hardship distribution. The health savings account, if the emergency, is not health related, then they would have to pay a penalty to withdraw those funds. So we're only seeing, on here, two green bars, taking it from savings and drawing from an employer-sponsored emergency savings account, where there would be, no debt incurred, unless your family and friends are particularly generous. We also heard that 50% of workers say that their retirement savings are the only significant emergency savings that they have. And while about half of workers are prepared to handle a $500 expense, once you up that to $5,000, only 20% say that they're very prepared to handle something like that. So diving a little bit deeper into the credit card debt, again, Doug, as you mentioned, this is driven largely by necessities of those who have credit card debt that's problematic. 52% say that that debt is driven by groceries, followed by vehicle expenses, household utilities, non-grocery household necessities. Only a handful on here are kind of sticking out as discretionary spending or luxury spending, like eating out, travel for leisure, vacation, luxury goods. Again, like you mentioned, this debt driven by day-to-day living. And of those who are paying for groceries with a credit card, 61%, according to the Urban Institute data from a couple years ago, um, are paying for groceries with a credit card, and only about half of those pay the full balance of the card. And then you'll see you have uh, other folks, about 20% paying for groceries with savings that weren't intended to be spent on routine living expenses, and some taking out loans just to put food on the table.
All right. So it's a problem. Um, it's a tricky problem. Why should employers care about this? So there's a variety of things that have been said about debt, what makes it particularly challenging in the workplace. But it's worth kind of reiterating some of these stats so that we can fully appreciate just how impactful it can be. It's not just money that you have to pay back, it also is preventing people from investing in their future. So, 74% of workers agree that thinking about their financial future makes them feel stressed. If that's the case and you have immediate issues, you're going to kind of ignore future savings and future needs for kind of dealing with the short term and only thinking about this kind of narrow horizon. It's also the case that the median first-time home buyer in 2003 was 36 years old, a record high. You could look at a lot of different things that, how much people are saving at young ages and see that kind of delayed kind of home buying, delayed savings, all of a function of kind of immediate problems with finances. It's also contributing to overall stress and mental health issues in a big way. So, from workplace wellness, 37% rate debt as their top financial stressor. But if you are looking at the people who have problematic debt, it's the number one answer for them. 66% say it's their top stressor. And 72% of workers say a lack of emergency savings makes them feel stressed. This is something that's kind of contributing to their kind of overall stress in a serious way. And employers should care about that for the sake of their workers. But, as we'll talk about in a second, they also have some incentives to kind of wanting their employers not to be overwhelmed and stressed with finances.
And Doug, I'd add to that, while 37% rate debt as a top financial stressor, other top stressors are saving for retirement and having significant emergency savings, both of which can be delayed if you have debt.
Right. And as I mentioned, it's not surprising that debt hurts a worker's ability to save effectively for retirement. So in a study I did with TIA, if workers received an extra $200, so as a hypothetical, you got a bonus, your take-home pay was increased. Those that have higher financial wellness, which was kind of described in a different way in that study, but debt was a major factor, um, would put an average of 71% of that money towards retirement savings. And if you look at the people who have low financial wellness, that group only puts an average of 45% to the savings. So even kind of thinking about future money that they come across, it's going to be easier to channel that to savings as opposed to needing it in the now. It's also the case from work with Lincoln Financial, the median retirement plan contribution for a worker with student loans is 3 percentage points lower than that of the typical worker. So if the typical worker is saving at a good 10%, the person with student loans is down at 7% just as the starting point on average. And 78% of that group with student loans say they are saving less than they need to be on track with their retirement savings. So a significant portion recognize the shortfall. It's also the case that workers with inadequate emergency funds are 13 times more likely to take hardship withdrawals from their 401k. So kind of amazing stat coming from BlackRock's Emergency Savings Initiative, that it is contributing not just to saving less, but from taking from the 401k in larger percentages. And so employers should care about their employees, but they should also care about this for selfish reasons. So the average American spends about 7 hours a week thinking about and dealing with personal financial issues. Being on this webinar does not count towards those 7 hours. But if you're looking at workers specifically, 5 of those hours occur at work on the job. So 5 of those 7 hours is a pretty large amount. I have to think as kind of work is now transitioning more towards mixing personal time and work time. That is an even muddier kind of issue in people's minds of kind of when they're thinking about and stressing about finances. Doesn't turn off when you're starting work. According to the Workplace Wellness Survey, 45% say worrying about their finances distracts them at work. So they, again, are kind of recognizing not just that they're spending time thinking about this, but it's distracting them from the work that they're doing. And there's a million studies linking financial stress in general with lower productivity, increased absenteeism and tardiness at work, higher healthcare costs because of the mental health burden and inability to pay for routine care, troubled relationships with coworkers and kind of issues with morale at work. It's kind of an interesting one. And higher turnover, lower retention. So even if the kind of wanting employees to focus is not the priority, sheer turnover and keeping employees retained, recruiting new employees is something that employers should have at the front of their mind of wanting to address and helping their employees with this.
Sure. So what employer solutions exist and what else is needed? I'm going to run through kind of the existing solutions fairly quickly because I know we're running short on time and want to leave a little bit of time for discussion. Many of these you may have heard of before, but some employer solutions to debt are related to education, student loan repayment programs, which can happen in recurring payments or lump sums. There's the Secure 2.0 provision that does allow student loan payments made by employees to be matched by employers as retirement account deposits. So this allows workers who can't afford to contribute to their retirement plan due to their student loan burden to still get that employer match so they don't fall quite as far behind. There are tuition reimbursement programs which can help lower the student loan burden post-graduation. 529 plans, so savings for the employee themselves or for their family members or children. And these are still, relatively new, especially for those who are using them for their children. I don't believe these really began to proliferate until around 2001. So we're just in the past handful of years reaching the age where kids who were born around 2001 would have started going to college a handful of years ago. There are also PTO exchange programs that allow you to cash out PTO, and those funds can be used in various ways, some pre-tax, some post-tax. It can go to the HSA, to a 401k, to student loan payments, those previously mentioned 529s, or taken out as cash. On the health side, you have your health savings accounts that can have employer contributions or not for those not on high deductible health plans, your HRAs and FSAs. Supplemental health benefits, CI, accident, hospital indemnity, cancer insurance. Again, these are often voluntary benefits. So maybe not a solution that a lot of lower income folks are going to gravitate towards given the out-of-pocket cost to them. Also wellness benefits that can include gym memberships, fitness classes, run club, or similar types of memberships. And other financial wellness solutions like emergency savings accounts. There are various options for how those are designed, whether they're within the retirement plan, out of the plan. Employers can offer matches or not have a match. There are discretionary contributions permitted as well. Employer provided emergency funds. Some employers will have those funds and qualification criteria where they can be dispersed to employees with no payback required up to certain dollar amounts. Others offer lines of credit with various options. Some of them are no interest. Some of them have interest, or they can be paid back via payroll deduction. And then the final piece here, providing financial education, things like debt consolidation programs or access to advisors. So pieces like this can be accessed through a variety of different avenues, whether those are carve out financial wellness services. Now you're starting to see some of those with a lot of AI features to help with financial planning. Some companies offer internal experts. There are retirement plan resources that allow access to advisors. EAPs will offer things like tax assistance and financial education, as well as legal assistance programs. So what else is needed? And I'll open it up to the group here in a second, but what we're thinking here, more employer adoption and investment in or promotion of the existing benefits. I think some of the benefits that we just went through are kind of hidden benefits, especially those around financial education resources. They're not talked about too much. Some employees may not know where to go to find them, whether or not they're covered by an EAP, if it's included as part of their retirement plan. And engagement with financial wellness benefits continues to be a challenge. Like Doug was mentioning earlier, people don't really like talking about this stuff, even to their best friends. So naturally, it'll be hard to be open about it with your employer. So how can we find ways to make these solutions less stigmatized and kind of reframe the narrative to be more about this is your compensation. You don't want to leave this on the table. Take advantage of the benefits that are available to you. In the last couple of points down here, benefits related to emergency savings. Sure, they can help reduce the likelihood that workers pull money from a 401k in the amount of an emergency or put it on a credit card. But what about those kind of day-to-day expenses, the essential expenses, and people who are putting those on credit cards and getting debt, finding themselves in debt that way? Pieces like stipends for monthly essentials that can be used at grocery stores or pharmacies. There are transportation reimbursement offerings. Also discount programs that the company negotiates with local retailers or gas stations for groceries and gift cards. So those are just a handful of ideas, but wanted to open it up to the room for any solutions that you all have heard of that have been effective, or what you think next steps are needed to be taken.
See that in the chat, have a question about what is the source for the 7 hours, 5 hours at work for dealing with personal financial issues. Is there a significant difference between income deciles? That's coming from the TIA PFIN index study. And I know that the data on the income differences is accessible. I can help get that for you. They're looking a lot at kind of financial literacy differences in which they do find people with lower financial literacy spend more time kind of thinking about it and worrying about it. I would imagine that it correlates with income in that case too, but can track that down for you. It's also a question from Jack Tornicki. In addition to reallocation of PTO, what are your thoughts on Back to the Future to traditional cafeteria plans with credits or allocations of employer contributions consistent with, looks like you wrote something about that, Jack. I'd love to get in contact and hear more about what your publication or what your letter was that you wrote on that.
So
Um,
that's a private letter ruling the IRS issued back in 2024. Just like the concept of matching student loan payments, that kind of got started as a private letter ruling.
mm,
And what they basically said is that something that a lot of people always believe, but very few people have ever implemented, to the best of my knowledge, is you could give employees control over the allocation of employer contributions as opposed to pretext contributions in a cafeteria plan. So you would, because of constructive receipt, you might want to do that prior to the beginning of the year so that if they wanted to put the match that they would have received in the K plan, for example, in their HSA, it's that kind of a concept, that kind of flexibility.
mhm,
The only solution that I would, encourage folks to think about is the code permits you to eliminate hardship withdrawals in your 401k plan or 403b and update your plan loan processing to 21st century functionality. Plan loans are not leakage unless they're not repaid, and most loans are repaid. You would combine 21st century functionality means a line of credit structure. It means electronic banking. It means you not only continue to do repayments after separation, but it also allows the individual to initiate a loan post-separation. And the other thing you do is you couple it with a whole bunch of behavioral economics prompts. So for example, on the loan app, you would have the person sign both as the lender, their future self, as well as the borrower. You would collect their banking information and remind them that the loan must be repaid. And if payments stop from payroll or don't even put them in payroll, that you just take them from their bank account. So there's a lot of things you can do, which will reduce the amount of leakage, which is one of the concerns I see it from your presentation. Thanks.
yeah, I think it's kind of a great comment. I appreciate your description of it. It's something I think needs more exploration. More flexibility with this stuff is important. It's also necessary, I think, to figure out a way for even in that situation to have employees understand how to navigate all of that effectively. Because I think even with the benefits that do exist at a variety of employers, getting engagement and having them be able to kind of effectively understand what's there and how to use it is going to be an issue. But hopefully we've kind of communicated that what's there is good, but not enough, and we need to kind of think about tackling this in new ways and creative ways that are helping do that, and also addressing debt in bigger ways, not just student loans and things that are existing now, but in kind of the everyday debt that we're dealing with. All right, we're a little bit over time here, so I want to Thank everyone for joining us. Greenwald conducts these coffee breaks every month, and we hope you will join us again. You can also view recordings of our coffee breaks on the website. I did want to take a moment to again plug the workplace wellness study that Greg is doing. If this is of interest to you, the current study is fielding and can have 2025 data relatively soon. But also for 2026 and beyond, sponsors have an opportunity to help us craft the questions and the topics that we're investigating. So we can kind of start to kind of refine what we're asking employees about this topic and kind of maybe what would be helpful in solutions, what would help them engage, all sorts of things that if this is a topic of interest, workplace wellness is trying to better understand that. So reach out to Greg if that is of interest. Lastly, this year, Greenwald is celebrating its 40th anniversary, as you can see from our little 40th anniversary icons in our screens. So in addition to these monthly coffee breaks, we'll be hosting more formal webinars, which have already been happening throughout the summer with outside experts and special guests. Our celebrations will culminate in an in-person health and wealth symposium and anniversary celebration in DC on November 4th through the 5th. Please save that date and keep an eye out for more information on upcoming coffee breaks, these special webinars, and our symposium. So thank you for joining. Please feel free to reach out if you have more questions on data, anything else. Always love to keep the conversation going. Hope you all have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.